Thank you guys for coming this early. I know it was kind of a late night last night. It is always a late night whenever you're at one of these conferences. And, I really do enjoy hanging out with other Bitcoiners, and I'm sure you do too. So, but thank you for coming out this morning and coming out to hear my talk. So, my talk is called Escaping the Golden Handcuffs, and it's unshackling from the fiat system. The video you just saw is a book trailer made by JD about the book I just wrote, Fiat Ruins Everything. And in that book, I make the case that fiat money ruins all sorts of things in society today. Everything that we hold dear, everything that we think of as good, gets ruined by fiat money. But I wanted to focus this talk on what to do about it, right? Because you know that a lot of stuff is broken. You know that so many things are kind of messed up. And in a sense, the incentives are just so horribly aligned. So what do you do, right? And unfortunately, the system is set up so that you're kind of trapped. And this is what I call the golden handcuffs. Now, this is a bunch of pictures of me, and over the past year, I traveled the world with my family. Took my kids out of school. We traveled all over the world. We traveled for 277 days, visited 34 countries, saw a lot of different things, as you can see in these pictures. And this is something that I got to do as a result of saving and planning. And it's something, the question that I got the most about this, especially from non-Bitcoiners, was, how the heck did you do this? Who takes out their kids for a whole year and just goes somewhere like that? And how are you able to do that? And that's kind of what I want to talk about, is what can we, this isn't even in people's minds as something that they can do. It's maybe sort of like a fantasy that they might have, but most people don't have the ability or the path to doing something like that. And really, the reason is because we are all chained by golden handcuffs. And what do I mean by golden handcuffs? I mean the thing that sort of anchors you to a place, that prevents you from going. And, if it were just normal handcuffs, it'd be something like slavery. But golden handcuffs are slightly different because they seem very attractive. And it's a lot like the song Hotel California. And if you're familiar with the song from the Eagles from the 70s, it's about the California lifestyle, right? You can check in anytime you like, but you can never leave. Or you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. You go there and then you just sort of stay, and you can't really ever leave because you're kind of stuck. And the fiat monetary system is very much like that. And in that sense, this song talks about that feeling that you have, that you're kind of stuck. The reason why the fiat system works the way it does is because in many ways it's attractive, right? You have a steady job, you have things that you can consume, and you get a lot of good stuff right away. And in many ways it's voluntary, right? You don't have to take out a loan for a mortgage on your house or something like that, but it's there and it's available. But inevitably it leads to some form of debasement, right? The job itself that you might have, or the communities that you're a part of, or the systems that you're a part of, they degrade over time. And that ultimately leads to a lot of sunk cost, right? You might have invested a lot into a career that you might not really like. You feel a little bit trapped. You feel stuck. And really, that's what that song is all about. It's Hotel California. You can kind of check out, right? Like you kind of become a zombie, but you can't really ever feel like you can leave the system. It's unfortunate, but that's how the system is almost designed. So what can we do about it? Well, but before we get to that though, Let's talk about what it is that kind of traps you. So here's one. It's like having a house, right? This is sort of like part of the American dream. And unfortunately, to get a house, you have to get a mortgage and do 5x leverage on your money to get one of these things. And you're in debt for something like 30 years. There's also university degrees, right? That's another one that entraps you because you have to take out loans to go to these things. It's now upwards of like $50,000, $60,000 a year. So over a course of 4 years, you've got almost $250,000 in debt. There's, of course, other things like credit cards and personal loans and things like that, which let you bring consumption forward. Essentially, all of these things are bringing consumption forward. So what happens when you bring consumption forward is that you have to pay all of that off over time. And ultimately, you end up working like crazy to pay off all of this consumption that you already did. This is Hotel California. This is how you get trapped. These are the golden handcuffs. You get stuff early, and then you have to keep paying it off. And those aren't the debt itself is a major mechanism in sort of trapping you in the fiat system, and that access to debt is how you're kind of stuck, right? But that's not the only one. There's other stuff like healthcare and retirement. These are sort of like future promises of things, or sort of things that you need in the, that they make seem like a necessity to live or something, right? You need healthcare, you need retirement, you need all of these things. But even stuff like career and status, there's a lot of status attached to a lot of these jobs and careers and things like that, which kind of get you stuck, right? If you're halfway up the partner track and then you suddenly quit, you've just wasted a whole bunch of time. And the status that you get from some of these jobs, particularly certain rent-seeking jobs, it tends to be very addicting because people give you a lot of respect, right? And people say good things about you, and you feel like part of society. And if you do something else, there's a social ostracization involved. And many of you may know this just by being in Bitcoin. It's like, okay, a lot of people kind of look at you weird when you tell them that you're involved in Bitcoin in some way. These are the mechanisms. This is Tae-Young Ho, and I want to talk about him about this because I had the privilege of talking to him for a few hours at the Oslo Freedom Forum back in 2019. He is the highest ranking North Korean defector, and I learned a lot from this guy. And what he said during that conversation really struck me because he was explaining what happened in North Korea. This is in the 50s and 60s when he was sort of consolidating power. The Soviets had essentially installed Kim Il-sung as the leader of North Korea. But he still needed to win the people over and consolidate power to become the authoritarian state that they are today. So how did he do it? And Tae-Young Ho told me exactly what happened. He started giving stuff away for free. So he said, all right, at first it was, okay, healthcare, we're going to give you that for free. Housing, we're going to give you that for free. A job, everyone's going to have a job. And people ate it up. They're like, oh yeah, I want healthcare. I want a house. I want free stuff. But there were strings attached with all of that stuff, right? There's always a cost to these things. And what he said essentially was that there is something beautiful about a market process and something very corrupting about getting stuff for free. Because when people claim that something is for free, it's not really free. You're just paying with something other than money. There's a sacredness to a market transaction where you're paying for something and both people are obligated to provide for the other person. And that means that you're kind of connected in a way. But if you're getting something for free, then you're sort of paying in other ways that you're not entirely aware of. And these costs include stuff like compliance, right? I remember during the pandemic, I saw a tweet from somebody that was on the left that said something like, "Hey, if you don't get a vaccine, then you should be denied emergency room services." This is where free stuff goes. You always pay with some level of compliance. And when you pay with compliance, well, ultimately this affects your values and beliefs because you're going to have to comply in a certain way. Your actions end up kind of changing what you value, what you believe. And that's where it leads to authoritarian rule because in a sense, if you're getting something for free and you're dependent on them giving you something for free, then you end up submitting to whatever it is that they want you to do. And ultimately, this sort of leads to a weird Stockholm syndrome where you end up loving something not because you believe that it's good, but because you are sort of propagandized into it, right? Like you comply so often that you end up thinking that this is good just because that's the way it's been. And unfortunately, most of society today is kind of in this weird Stockholm syndrome with respect to fiat money and government intervention. That's the cost of all of this stuff. That's how the fiat system entraps you. So how do we break free? How do we get out of this stuff? Well, I have some thoughts on that. Escaping from the fiat system and sort of breaking free from our chains requires a few things. First, save and get out of debt. Because debt is bringing consumption forward. Debt is slavery. And getting out of debt and saving is the way to freedom. You're going to need to save because this is the way in which you grow out of the dependence of the fiat system. And if you're not saving, and it used to be that if you did try to save, it was going to be very difficult. It was going to be a full-time job because you had to manage your investments. You had to manage whatever savings vehicle that you happen to choose. But now a better form of saving is here. We have Bitcoin. You can put money in Bitcoin. You don't have to think so much about it. You don't have to work a job to keep your money. Instead, you can just keep it in Bitcoin. That's a major tool. Second, pay for value, right? Be suspicious of everything that is given to you for free because in some way they are going to corrupt you. And paying for value is a critical part of this market transaction because both people are obligated once you pay. When you're paying somebody for some good or service, they have some obligation to you to make sure that you get something good. And that's critical because if you're getting something for free, they don't care about you, right? Do you think Facebook cares about you? Right? Do you think X or Twitter or whatever the hell that thing is cares about you? Or TikTok or Instagram or any of these things that you supposedly get for free? They don't care. They cancel you whenever they feel like it, or whenever it's inconvenient, or whenever you're unprofitable, because of course you're the product. So pay for the things, right? And this is what's beautiful about decentralized protocols, because you're gonna have to run your own server somewhere. You're gonna have to custody your own key somewhere. This is where paying for value is very useful. And that means taking personal responsibility. When you get a lot of stuff for free, there's a deep dependence on the provider of that free thing. But when it's decentralized, you get used to taking responsibility over your own stuff. And you need to grow in that in order to escape from the fiat system, because there are all sorts of dependencies that they've put on you. Do you think Americans would be so fat if they didn't have like this crazy healthcare system that sort of protects them and is sort of like a safety net for all kinds of stuff? I would guess not. They'd probably care a lot more about their health if they didn't have the safety net. But once you take personal responsibility over your own health, well, you're going to be a lot more careful. And of course, you need to be looking for opportunities. Looking for opportunities. If you want to escape from the fiat system, particularly your job, most people have a job with a large corporation. Getting out of that is going to be a major step in escaping from the fiat system, because that's the major vector by which they induce dependency. Most people just have a single job, a single customer essentially, and if they cut you off, you're dead. So as a result, you end up adopting the values of the company that you happen to work for. And I know that was the case for me when I left my last fiat job. Right? I was working for a company in 2017. And I went off on my, before going off on my own, I did a lot of thinking. And it was really scary, right? Thinking about going and starting my own company and doing my own thing and trying to provide value to, this community and so on. Because I had always been sort of dependent on a company to provide a lot of things for me. But I also knew that there were a lot of costs in that dependency. I had certain beliefs that I didn't realize came from being in a company, right? You always end up defending the company that you work for, even if they're not necessarily doing things that are in alignment with your beliefs. In fact, your beliefs tend to change towards whatever it is that you're dependent on. And we see this phenomenon all the time in altcoins, right? People that are dependent or that are holding their bags tend to defend it. But that scariness of having going off on your own and doing your own thing, that's there because you've never really been free before, and it takes a lot of courage to do that. In fact, it took me an entire month of contemplating whether to do it. It took me a month to get up the gumption to go out and try to do my own thing, to start my own business. But that's the thing that's required to escape. You need to have the will to escape. All right, so what I'm encouraging you here is to go and do your own thing. Be an entrepreneur, provide a good or service to other people, because this is ultimately how you escape from the fiat system. Provide value to other people directly instead of indirectly through possibly doing something that a company might make some good or service that might be good for somebody. Because honestly, there's so many layers of rent seeking that you end up not feeling like you're contributing very much. So here are some practical tips. First, find something that you're good at. And for me, the easiest way to tell whether or not you have something of value to other people is people keep asking you to go do something, right? Hey, can you organize X, or can you help me do Y, or something like that? Whatever that is, start seeing if that could be turned into a business. Second, get in a community. And I'm kind of preaching to the choir here because obviously you guys are already in a community and here to make connections and so on. But get in a community, right? Because you need other people to make those connections and network so that you have not just customers, but also support in what you're doing. Third, charge money, and hopefully like an unreasonable amount almost. And I can tell you as an entrepreneur that the people that pay the most give you the least problems. The people that pay the least, the cheapskates, they cause the most. And the people chuckling right now probably know this because they've given a discount to somebody or whatever. And it's a little bit counterintuitive, but it makes sense after you think about it. The people that are willing to pay the most, they get the value of whatever it is you're providing very clearly. The people that have to be convinced by dropping the price, they don't get the value, and they have to be convinced that what you're providing them is worthwhile. So of course they're going to cause the most problems. Charge money, and don't be apologizing about it. And finally, don't take on debt. And this unfortunately is prevalent in the fiat monetary system, where a lot of people just want to grow fast, so they take on debt to do it. But that's just making you beholden to the people that hold the debt. And I count VC investment as, in many ways, very similar to debt. Now, I want to finish here with a tale of two cities, right? A tale of two cities. The one on the left is Paris. The one on the right is Brasilia. And there's a big difference between these two cities. Paris is a very organic city. It's a city that sort of grew over a long period of time and wasn't designed by anybody. It was just sort of built up slowly. And, you know, it's obviously one of the biggest tourist destinations around the world. One on the right, Brasilia, was completely a planned city. It's the capital of Brazil, and they decided it's going to be right there, and they designed everything from the top down. Now, I want to ask you, which city would you rather live in? Would you rather live in Paris or Brasilia? Yeah. Which one looks more like a prison, right? This is what happens when you have top-down sort of control. And the fact of the matter is, any fiat system tends towards socialism, tends towards central control, tends towards top-down design, which is honestly not very human, right? It just doesn't look like a place where you want to live. And unfortunately, with the large companies and everything else that's going on in the world today, we are going way more towards the city on the right than the city on the left. And by being entrepreneurs, by creating value, you are creating more Paris and less Brasilia. And that's where I want you guys to go, because ultimately that's what builds civilization rather than crushes it. All right, my new book is called Fiat Ruins Everything. You can go to fiatruinseverything.com to join in the crowdfund. And thank you very much. I'm open for questions. How much did I have saved up before I took the leap? I guess you're referring to my world trip, or? Oh, having my own business. Yeah. So going off on my own business, I had like 2 years of salary saved up, so I could go try something like that. And the idea was, if I failed and fell on my face, I can always just go back and try again. Yeah. What happened to the bet with Joe Lubin? He never finalized the bet. So we were arguing about what a daily active user meant, and he wanted to include all sorts of stuff that I didn't consider a daily active user. And 2019, I kept emailing him, and he just at some point he just stopped responding to my email, so it never finalized. Yeah, back there.
I really enjoyed all the stuff you said about entrepreneurship, and in particular about how the environment we place ourselves in, we're basically inviting our beliefs and values to be steered by the environment. I'd be curious to hear your take, and sorry if this is uncomfortable in front of this crowd, but I'd be curious to hear what you think about entrepreneurship versus joining a Bitcoin company as an employee.
Entrepreneurship versus joining a Bitcoin company. Yeah, good question. It really depends on the company, right? And it depends on your situation, what your talents happen to be. I do believe that there is something that you can gain from joining a Bitcoin company. And certainly if you want to know how like a Bitcoin business runs and things like that, you know, that might be a step toward it. But in a sense, when you work at a company, the thing that's very stifling is that you don't get to use all of your talents. So if you get hired as a coder, you code. You don't get paid to do anything else. You might be very good at lots of other stuff, like shit posting on Twitter or something. But you're not going to get paid for that necessarily. So what you want to be doing is utilizing all of yourself, and this is one of the subtle things about entrepreneurship that is way more fulfilling than a typical fiat job, is that you get to use more of yourself. You get to bring all of your talents to bear on the business that you have. So I don't know, maybe you're a good singer and you record a jingle for your business or something, right? Like there are all kinds of ways in which you can use all parts of yourself. So while I do think that joining a Bitcoin company can be very good and you can learn a lot of stuff, in a way, it's still kind of a role. And ultimately, I think what helps you the most, for escaping the golden handcuffs, is going out on your own and being able to save. Not everyone's gonna be able to go to that right away. So in the meantime, it's fine to go work at a Bitcoin company with the goal of doing something else. And that might be, doing all kinds of stuff. I was talking to American Hodl a while back, and he told me that most filmmakers spend like 4 years raising money and then 4 years shooting. Instead of spending 4 years raising money, why don't you just like save money by working, right? Like that would be the way to do it. Instead of begging other people and taking on debt, go and just save money, right? Like that's the way towards your dreams. And you can get your dreams back as a result of doing that. So I would say that, there is some saving that you need to do before you can pursue the dreams that you have. So, in the meantime, while you're saving, having I guess something like a fiat job or the least fiat job that you can get is beneficial, right? This is what we call fiat mining in some places. So fiat mine until you have enough to go and do what you really want. All right. I think that's my time. Thank you.
Grandpa, why do you have so much Bitcoin?
Well, it all started in the year 2023 when I attended a conference called BitBlockBoom.
What's BitBlockBoom, Grandpa?
It was a conference where people talked about Bitcoin. This was way back when we used something called the US dollar for money.
What? Bitcoin wasn't always the world's money?
If it weren't for great speakers at BitBlockBoom like Jimmy Song, Adam Curry, and Preston Pish, we'd all be living in pods and eating bugs. Instead, I was able to avoid fiat enslavement and secure generational wealth.
F***ing legend.
Be the legend your grandchildren deserve. Experience the best Bitcoin conference out there and join the Bitcoin revolution. BitBlockBoom, the only conference for true Bitcoin maximalists. Book your tickets today at bitblockboom.com and use the code BBB1 for a special discount.